Hello, Texas PTS. My name is TKurtz. I'm an orthopedic resident down at the San Marcos Clinic. I was speaking with my mentor a little bit about this paper, and she had the idea that I should make a quick synopsis and get it out to the people, and hopefully we can all learn something from it. So, without further ado, I hope this is helpful for y'all. So we're looking at a study by Robert Morton and his team out of Ontario, Canada. This is back a couple years ago in the Journal of Applied Physiology, and the title is going to give us a spoiler about the results, but let's look into it. It's called Neither Load Nor Systemic Hormones Determine Resistance Training Mediated Hypertrophy or Strength Gains in Resistance Trained Young Men. So the author states the purpose of this trial is to determine the effects of a 12-week program looking at high repetition, low load, or low repetition, high load resistance training, looking at the skeletal muscle hypertrophy and strength development in regards to 1 rep max testing in these resistance trained young men. So this is in the Journal of Applied Physiology. And the other markers they'll be looking at is whether these acute post-exercise hormones that are flowing through our system, if those have any correlation with changes in skeletal muscle mass or strength, right? So looking at the physiology and seeing if there's a correlation there as well. How do we get here? What is the research before this? And why is Dr. Morton looking at this study? Or why is he conducting this study, right? So it's kind of a topic that some people talk about right now about how to load individuals, and the current recommendations is if you want hypertrophy, 70 to 85% of 1 rep max, right, load them a little bit heavier in order to get this overload principle to get high motor unit recruitment. And that's the way to induce hypertrophy. However, in some previous physiology studies, they've taken individuals anywhere from 30% 1 rep max to 90% 1 rep max, and they found that it actually has minimal effect on protein synthesis if they don't take these individuals too far into their training program, if they don't go to volitional failure. Volitional means voluntary, right? So these individuals have to use their free will and voluntarily go to failure and really push it in these trials. Another physiology study looked at these circulating exercise-induced hormones, and also saw that they may play little role in the actual protein synthesis of cells in these acute bouts of resistance exercise. So Dr. Morton is going on to say that he believes that volitional failure is the thing. This is the leading contributor and what he believes is the causation behind hypertrophy and strength changes. So that's the big question, right? Should I goblet squat my daughter 100 times or just load this puppy up on the right once, give it a good back squat, and be done for the week? So let's see how Dr. Morton designed this program. He recruited 49 healthy young men, average age 23 years old, average BMI 26, and all these individuals had a couple years of strength training experience. So if there is a limitation to this study, here's one of them. Not our typical outpatient ortho population, but hopefully we can use this study to see what muscle does under optimal and ideal circumstances and try to learn that way. So the authors, 2 weeks before the trial started, they got their 1 rep max numbers. They're looking at 4 measures: leg press, shoulder press, bench press, and then isotonic knee extension. Same thing, they also got some blood samples to look at the hormone levels, as well as took a biopsy of the quad on these individuals. So the 2 groups we're going into: high repetition, low load, right? 30 to 50% 1 rep max. These individuals are going to do 3 sets of 20 to 25 reps. The key here is each of those 3 sets reaching volitional failure. On the other side, we've got the low rep, high load individuals, 75 to 90% of 1 rep max, and 8 to 12 reps, right? Again, reaching failure, right? So on each set, trying to reach failure. The individuals conducting the study were the one would make sure that each set did reach failure. And And then you look up top right, 4 days per week for 12 weeks was the dosage of exercise. So again, another limitation of the study, that's a pretty high dosage that we don't typically get in clinic. But hopefully, again, we can learn what, under optimal circumstances, what muscle is going to do. Just some background on these 49 healthy young men. They're going to come in each morning fasting. So they'll come in fasting. They'll get their blood drawn. They'll do the exercise program for the day, and then they'll take their 30 grams of whey protein, and then they're getting their blood drawn immediately after exercise, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and 60 minutes after to look at their hormone levels. Then they'll also drink 30 grams of whey protein later on that evening. So here's the program. Monday, Thursday, we have 2 of our asterisk signs, the leg press and the bench press, which the author was testing at later on in the marks. They also had some pretty individual exercise, seated row, hamstring curl, planks. Tuesday, Friday, again, 2 asterisk signs of machine guided knee extension and shoulder press, which they are testing, and then some isolated work of the biceps, isolated work of the triceps, wide grip pull down. Again, a note at the bottom by the author is that there's a supervised trainer there to make sure that they're hitting volitional failure with each set, right? And as the weeks progressed and these individuals got stronger, they would continue loading more and more weight to make sure that they were reaching failure with their rep range. So what do we get out of all this, right? What do we learn here? So when looking at muscle fiber composition, right, they took that biopsy at the end. Significant increase in cross-sectional area for both groups, but not significant between groups, right? Same thing in type 1 and type 2, both increased. I believe that's how it was. And again, but no difference. So even with the low load, high repetition, equal type 1 to type 2 fiber ratio composition versus a higher load. And then we get onto the strength testing. Again, both groups, significant increase in all 4 categories as would be expected, but between groups, no significance between leg press, knee extension, and shoulder press. All made relatively similar gains. The only outlier was the bench press, which the low repetition group had a statistically significant better delta, a better change in bench press than the high repetition group. So that was the outlier there. And then we're looking at the hormones. I have it below. So the hormones they were looking at were things like testosterone, luteinizing hormone, IGF-1, growth hormone, cortisol, things like that. They got into some pretty deep science on it. So everyone else, feel free to read that section of it. But long story short, again, no significant differences between the groups when it came to these hormone numbers. So there was no correlation to mass in this one rep max testing strength in regards to hormones. So whatever these groups did, they got a similar stimulus between groups. And so even though hormone levels were not different between groups. So big picture, what are you going to take away from this? Take away from this one slide, if anything, right? So the amount of mass lifted per repetition does not determine the muscle protein synthesis or the hypertrophy, right? But that is only when the resistance exercise is performed until volitional failure, right? So not a lot of our people in clinic are going to failure. So consider that even with the lightweight things, these studies are done to failure, and these improvements in hormones and one rep max testing are done to failure. There's taken together with previous data, the findings present along with the recent meta-analysis do not support the assertion that you need a high load to maximize hypertrophy, and especially when the low load is performed to volitional failure. So when you take a step back and look at the training volume between groups, there was a large difference in training volume between groups. The high repetition group had 162% more reps in order to get the same stimulus. And so the authors The authors were just as they had hypothesized. That was there. So let's look at maybe a quick case study, right? So say you have an athlete come in. 'Cause we are talking about young, healthy adult males. So maybe in St. Marcus we have a Texas State, rugby player come in, a soccer player come in. Say it's 1 rep max on a back squat is 225. And so we have 2 avenues we can go to give this man or this woman the same stimulus, right? If we want the same hormones produced and the same type of hypertrophy gains. So if we go with a heavier back squat, 180 pounds is the 80% 1 rep max. We do 32 repetitions of 4x8. Our total volume is 5760. On the other side of the coin, if we do want to just have that individual do a lighter load, or just in this example, a 90-pound back squat, right? So only 40% of his 1 rep max, relatively easy. We need to crank out these repetitions, 26 repetitions each time, and that is hopefully going to failure, right? 4 rounds of that, 104 reps. And so the total volume on this individual would be 9,331 pounds. Both scenarios will give you the same stimulus. It's just all about which avenue you want to take to get there. So I hope this has been helpful, y'all. Here's some references if y'all want to check them out. Again, thanks to Tiffany Constantino. She's my mentor. She is super helpful every day. I'm in clinic with her, so a big shout out to Tiff. And thanks y'all for watching. Hopefully this has been helpful. Feel free to reach out and email me if you have questions. TKurtz@textpts.com. And yeah, cheers guys.